The Thatcher government unleashed a disaster in the 1980s, a complete failure that continues to plague the country's public transport system. And Labour is proposing major changes. So there's finally something positive to say about the Labour government. I've given them a hard time so far. I think they deserve it. But their announcements on buses could have a dramatic impact, I think. The Thatcher experiment was a brutal change. From 1930 to 1960s, governments had regulated bus services in the public interest. Most services were delivered through publicly owned bus companies, usually run by councils. Then, in the 1980s, almost overnight, the industry transformed into a free-for-all where nearly anyone could run a bus service, and there was an outright ban on local councils running services. This was about getting the state out of being involved in providing public services. I can remember well when this happened. Suddenly we had the appearance of old, often unreliable buses bought second-hand from defunct fleets. Some of them were still bearing faded colours and logos of their previous operators. There was a strange mix of ageing double-deckers and minibuses competing fiercely for passengers. Routes were duplicated, schedules overlapped, and the quality of services varied widely as public operators tried to carve out their own share of the market. This was totally unregulated. There was little oversight, which resulted in an inconsistent and often confusing network of bus services. There are still some people who view the Thatcher years through rosy-coloured spectacles. You might still hear someone talk of this period as a bold experiment in competition. The truth is that this period provides a stark case study in neoliberal failure. It shows how profit-driven policies dismantled an essential public service and deepened social inequality. The 1984 Buses White Paper set out the Thatcher's government's aims of deregulation. It made statements such as, there is good evidence that services could be improved and costs reduced. We were told that more people would travel. But completely the opposite happened. Services deteriorated. Councils still had to subsidise services substantially to ensure that some people at least could still get to work. And there's been a fall in the number of people travelling. There's no humility in this policy paper. Things are stated as true, which have been conclusively proven not to be true. The document also presented a deluded view of the impact of competition. If one operator fails to provide a service that is wanted, another will. A naive belief that perfect competition from the economic textbooks would apply. This was pure economic ideology, not based on any evidence, a naive belief in the market and a total neglect of economic theory. It just goes to show that what governments present as fact should always be questioned. Ultimately, there is no certainty in economics. Most economics starts from ideology, from belief. But this experiment has caused decades of damage that we're still paying for now. We're trapped in this failed neoliberal economic experiment. It not only hasn't worked and reduced the number of people taking buses, it's had broader impacts, and there's 3 points that I want to raise here. First, for the environment, obviously the more people that travel by bus, the less pollution there is and the less congestion there is, the less full car parks will be. For longer journeys, people are more likely to take the train if there's a good bus service at the other end. The anti-privatisation campaign group We Own It reports that 57% of motorists would use their car less if bus fares were lower and services more reliable. The second point is that this degradation of bus services has also worsened inequality and poverty. Obviously, it tends to be poorer people that use buses. A 2021 report from the Center for Human Rights and Global Justice at New York University found that many people have lost jobs and benefits, faced barriers to healthcare, been forced to give up on education, sacrificed food and utilities, and been cut off from friends and family because of a costly, fragmented and inadequate privatised bus service that has failed them. It points out that the UK has international human rights obligations and that the ability to exercise the rights depends on access to a reliable and affordable bus service. This isn't just some random trivial claim. This report is a serious analysis of the human rights impact of this disastrous policy. And the third point on the wider impact is that it hasn't become a sustainable, vibrant industry with different companies competing with each other. Public money accounts for over 40% of bus operator revenue. Worse, all of the returns have been extracted from the industry for shareholders. We Own It calculates that £1.49 billion has gone to shareholders in 10 years to 2019 due to privatisation. This could have been reinvested in the system. So Labour's proposed buses bill focuses on allowing local authorities to take control of bus services, potentially through franchising or public ownership. The bill includes provisions to remove barriers that currently limit bus franchising powers to metro mayors, accelerate the franchising process, and allow for the establishment of publicly owned bus companies. The emphasis is on public control, similar to the Transport for London system. TfL has been the exception to all of this ban. London buses have been run on a franchise system. TfL is in control and private operators can run services only if they win a contract. This explains why London buses have always been pretty good. The same deregulation didn't take place in London. The introduction of a new franchising system in Manchester is also considered to be a success. Franchising is definitely a big step forward. It's a major reform to allow local authorities to be in control of bus services again. However, franchising is still not public ownership. This still means that profits are extracted from the service. I personally would prefer buses to be back under full local government control. However, without additional funding for local councils, many of whom are close to bankruptcy, it seems unlikely that many local authorities will be able to set up their own service. But the franchising model does seem to work in London and Manchester, so let's take it all as a positive step forward. The economics of this are very simple. A bus network is a natural monopoly. Trying to introduce competition has only resulted in market failure. No one wants to provide services on the less profitable routes, so the market fails. Competition doesn't work in a natural monopoly. It was always doomed to failure. An economics student could have told Mrs. Thatcher that. But it actually wasn't about economics. It was about right-wing ideology. It was about neoliberalism taking over the world. I still think that Labour is too dominated by neoliberal thinking, but this is an excellent policy. It will help poverty and inequality. It will actually help growth because where services improve, people will find it easier to travel to jobs that may currently be inaccessible. For once, I can say something positive about Labour in terms of heading in the right direction out of the neoliberal nightmare that we've been in for decades. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.